And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. MLS history is back again with some of the biggest games and biggest moments from MLS 2.0. First, David Beckham has arrived, and it's time for his first start in MLS against no other than the biggest club in world football, the New York Red Bulls. A 9-goal thriller with 2 assists from Beckham leaves fans breathless and begging for more. That is followed by one of the most insane pieces of MLS lore in the history of this league, what is known as the Rico Stomp on Carlos Ruiz. I'm Andrew, that's Connor over there, and this is MLS History Retold. I am so excited for this one because this is one of my favorite games in MLS history. I can't wait to share it with you.
I don't like the way you described that game. I don't like it one bit.
Why?
Breathless
Because
and wanting more.
breathless, wanting more. See, I was going to make a joke after that, but I figured this is a family-friendly podcast, and
It
I
is a family friendly
I, I
podcast.
simply can't tread that line, you
You
know.
need to behave yourself. Unlike
I
Ricardo Clark, who did not behave himself.
Oh, look at you.
That's not a transition because I don't go first. But
Yeah, that's nice. And we wouldn't be able to transition because we haven't talked about the most important part of the episode, and that's scarf of the week. What are you rocking?
well, I am wearing Ricardo Clark's team. That's what I'm wearing. That transition did not work.
Nice.
There really wasn't a transition there. I don't know. But I've got myself the Houston Dynamo scarf. I don't know if the crest is on this side. It is not. Here's the crest, if you can see it.
I can
Boom.
see it. Well, for my scarf, my friend, I've gone back because this is the first year I do believe that they were rebranded Red Bull from the Metro Stars. So I've got this little scarf here, Red Bull on one side, Metro on the other. Very fitting for the occasion, if you will.
Very nice. Very fitting.
It would be a scarf that I probably would have enjoyed wearing if I were at the game and not 9 years old.
That sounds like a you problem. Skill issue.
Yeah, but I do believe it's time to just jump right into this, and I'm gonna take the reins here because
Go
to
for
this
it.
point, Beckham had technically made his debut. There's an 18-minute cameo in a 1-0 loss to DC United. But back on August 17th, 2007, MLS was changed forever when one of the sport's biggest and most iconic figures graced the LA Galaxy starting 11 at Giant Stadium in front of a sold out crowd of over 66,000 fans. Not to mention the insane amount of eyeballs for an MLS game back home. This was must see television. And with one blow of Kevin Stott's whistle, David Beckham ushered in an era presently known as MLS 2.0. Now, there is just simply not enough time, nor do we have the ability to talk as in-depthly as we should about the build-up to what David Beckham's arrival meant to MLS, what his status at the time, the impact he had made on world football, anything in between. We can't cover that. We would not do it justice. We would not be able to go deep enough. But luckily, somebody else did. We encourage everybody who hasn't already to give a read to the eternal Grant Wall's book, The Beckham Experiment. The detail he goes into in covering Beckham's impact from the second he steps foot into the country to the second he leaves is second to none. And I can't recommend that book enough. But while we can't cover Beckham's legacy in this episode, what we can do is talk about his first ever start. Let's update where we are in the table at this point in MLS history heading into the match. The newly named New York Red Bulls sat joint fourth overall in the Shield standings with 33 points, while the Galaxy were dismally just 2 points above the bottom of the league with only 14 points through 20 games. That was all set to change as the legendary David Beckham joined up with the Californian side for the last part of the season. The whistle blew, and we were off for one of the greatest games in MLS history. And it did not take long for this party to get started. In the 4th minute of play, on a field still covered by faded NFL yard markings, the best designated player on the field that day put his team in the lead. That's right, Juan Pablo Angel, of course. A free kick from just outside the box was hit low and hard under the wall, catching the LA goalkeeper Joe Cannon off guard. He got a hand to it, but could not keep it out, and the ball crossed the line to give Red Bull the 1-0 lead. And listen, I'm no mega historian or anything, but people say Messi actually learned his free kick technique from Juan Pablo Angel. I wouldn't be shocked, but like I haven't. I mean, who doubts it, right? Not me. This lead lasted about a minute and a half because David Beckham did David Beckham things. In the 6th minute, he stood over a corner kick and whipped it into the near post, where Carlos Pavone, that's right, the Pavone before the Pavone, rose highest to get his head on the ball and nodded into the far corner past a flailing Ronald Waterous. The energy level rose in the stadium with 2 goals after 6 minutes, and you thought it simply could not get any better. As the announcer said on the day, it's like the Yankees playing the Dodgers, 2 clubs with high-profile players going blow for blow. And as he's saying that, David Beckham and the LA Galaxy landed yet another blow. Standing over a free kick about 35 yards from Red Bull's goal, he swung in his patented long ball service made famous from all his time in Manchester United, which once again found the head of Carlos Pavone. He snuck it past Waterous, sending the decibel levels even higher. In fairness, Waterous probably should have done better, but no one in the majority pro-Beckham crowd on the day cared in the slightest. A break from the action for some narrative here. Looking at the gamble that it took to convince David Beckham, one of the greatest players of his generation, to come to America and help this, in all seriousness, flailing and struggling league to get to another level, this game reminds me of the feeling of the first game of the first season ever. If you remember back to that moment in history when we covered that story, so much had gone into the preparation for that moment, and the worst possible thing would have been a boring 0-0 game. This was the same feeling that came out of this game. You bring David Beckham over with all the promises and hope in the world for it to be a slow start, 0-0, ugly play that Beckham barely even featured in one of the biggest cities in your current market at the time. It would have been catastrophic for what this would have been. 8 minutes into the match, it was proof that this gamble had paid off and was going to be monumental for what was to come. Back to the action. As the half went on, the game started to open up. In the 21st minute, LA continued their onslaught with Beckham's free kick from a similar spot. He nearly provided a third assist from this exact same area, but Waterous actually kept it out this time. RB and I would then get back into the match with a few chances of their own, including one that was cleared off the line by Pavone himself, getting it done on both ends, as well as Juan Pablo Angel getting himself another chance that was tipped over the bar by Joe Cannon. 5 minutes later, it was LA's turn. As Donovan got in behind, rounded the keeper, and put his chance just wide of the post. The ensuing attack from that Donovan chance saw Josie Altidor's close-range header turned away by Joe Cannon. To say this game was end-to-end doesn't do it justice, and it's exactly what the people wanted to see. High-profile attacking football. After all of these chances, it wasn't until the 2nd minute of added time in the first half that Red Bull would see themselves get level. A long ball is played down the line to fan favorite Dane Richards, who gets on the end of it and cuts it back to his favored right foot. His initial service actually struck David Beckham straight in the side of his head. The deflection fell right back to his foot. He was able to skate around his defender and ended up trying to take a shot on goal. That shot was blocked super high in the air and hung up there for what felt like an hour until it fell favorably to the foot of one of the most dangerous non-designated players in league history, Mr. Cletus Mathis. He hit the ball with such force and velocity, I thought it was going to break the net, but he rifled it past Joe Cannon to level the game just before the halftime whistle. 2-2 into the break, 2 Beckham assists, end-to-end attacking football, perfect storm of football for Beckham's first start, and there was still 45 minutes to go. The general feeling this time was that this game had more goals in it. And boy, was that feeling right. Just 4 minutes into the second half, we get one of the most iconic goal calls in MLS history. Originating from an uncharacteristically poor David Beckham free kick, the ball was intercepted by Red Bull and the counter was on. The ball fell to Mathis, who hit an early service to teenage striking prospect, some of you may know this name, Josie Altidore. The teenager took his first touch into space and he was one-on-one with the goalkeeper. His prep touch set him up for a perfect finish and he slid it underneath the goalkeeper to give Red Bull the lead yet again. As this is going on, the announcer, whose name I could not find, graced the ears of those listening at home with one of the greatest calls of all time.
The Red Bulls into a counter. Onside, Altidore, yes! The kid's done it again!
Josie runs off to the corner to celebrate, and the Galaxy see themselves behind yet again. However, the foot never came off the proverbial pedal, as LA nearly got themselves nominated for their very own When Playing It Out of the Back Goes Wrong, before When Playing It Out of the Back Goes Wrong became cool. 2 minutes later, it's Donovan in behind again, holding off 2 defenders in the Red Bull box before squaring it to Major League Journeyman's own Alan Gordon, whose shot was forced wide by a charging Waterous. Just 10 minutes later, it was that kid again to give Red Bull a 2-goal cushion. Picking the ball up on the edge of the box on the left-hand side, he cuts in with some fancy step overs for a big guy and fires it low, hard, and past a wrong-footed Joe Cannon in the 70th minute. 4-2, 20 minutes left. One may think this is the time where LA just packs it in, basically bottom of the table. What's there to play for, right? But in case anybody thought that's the way it was actually going to go, stick around, because in the time it took for Fox Soccer Channel to show the replays of Josie Altidore scoring that goal, Landon Donovan picked up the ball in the half space, drove down the channel, cut inside, and fired it past Waterrice, who, again, probably should have done better on this finish, from 3-2 to 4-3 in 45 seconds. Long live MLS. In the 81st minute, a long and hopeless ball was played toward Edson Buttle, and it was clumsily headed over the line for a corner by Clint Mathis. The corner swung in by Beckham once again, finds the head of a Galaxy player, this time Kyle Veris. His header rings off the crossbar and falls nicely to the foot of Edson Buttle, who effortlessly taps it over the line to make it 4-4. This scoreline, as you can expect, set up a game-winning goal for a big-name player under the designated player tag, formerly of Premier League glory, to wrap up this 9-goal thriller. And as everybody expected, that player was Juan Pablo Angel. In the 88th minute, after a long clearance from the Galaxy, Dane Richards wins the ball back about 45 yards from LA's goal, and his first instinct is get the ball to Clint Mathis. He drives forward and rifles a shot with his left foot towards Joe Cannon's goal. Cannon goes full stretch to keep that ball out and does very well to make the first save, but his parried effort falls not wide enough to avert the danger. Juan Pablo Angel was fastest to react, got to the loose ball first, fired it towards the goal from a tight angle, and a diving Joe Cannon did get his hands on it, but his momentum took both himself and the ball directly into the goal over the line. It gave Red Bull a 5-4 lead, exactly as the script writers drew it up. Red Bull would see it out and pick up all 3 points on the night in front of a sold-out crowd at Giant Stadium. But when you think back to the big chances this league has taken, getting the league started in general, coming back from nearly folding in 01, the Beckham experiment, Tam and Gam, getting in players at a level like Messi, they all come with this similar feeling. It's a gamble, and the gambles need to pay off if we're going to be successful. To think back about how games like this not only impacted the present time in 2007, but also what the league turned into is something to behold. While it's been slow and steady thus far, games like this go down in history, not just because of the outcome on the night, but the impact that it had on the league 10, 20, 50 years down the road. I bet you if you polled a handful of fans right now, they'd say one of their biggest memories from early MLS days is this game, and that's what kept them around.
So originally I was on board with giving you Red Bull related stuff, but I think we need to take you off of it because the amount of Red Bull glazing in this episode was crazy.
Cope.
It was crazy. It was off the charts. Like normally there's some level of it, and I built that into my expectations, but this episode was like it was unbelievable. You were hitting record highs.
Well, luckily for you, as you know, I'm a scientist, and I'm actually working on a brand new element for you. It's called copium, and I am hoping to get it in production relatively soon so you can hold back your tears and just live. Connor, you know what I miss most about going to games in real life?
What's that, Andrew?
Taking home that real ticket stub at the end of the day. Everything's all electronic these days, and we've lost the ability to collect those memories.
I couldn't agree more. I love having the physical keepsakes from games, and I wish they didn't do away with these.
Well, lucky for you, today's sponsor, StubForge, can help you fill that void. StubForge is a custom ticket company that helps you bring memories to life in the form of real, physical, customizable ticket stubs. With 7 different styles to choose from, you can create a custom ticket for any event your heart desires. From events you have attended in the past to dream matchups like RBNY winning this year's MLS Cup.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Not only can you bring your memories to life, it is also a great way to make unique and fun invitations to parties, weddings, events, and so much more to make them feel like VIPs to the biggest occasions in your life.
These tickets look and feel like the real thing, printed on the same stock Ticketmaster uses and with actual ticket printers so that you can be sure the quality will be just as good as what you'd get at the gate.
Not to mention how easy it is to design. Just go online to stubforge.com and start creating right away. The amount of customization you can add to these tickets is unreal. From venues, addresses, show and print times, seat location, prices, and so much more. You can make the ticket exactly as you dreamed it would be, all with just a few clicks.
Matt, when we take our designated player tour of all the stadiums in the league, we're going to have to get some of these to commemorate each and every match.
100%. If you want to create your own tickets, head over to stubforge.com. That's stubforge.com and start designing today. All right. I don't have a funny, good transition, so I'm just going to jump into the story on the Rico, and I'm going to put this in quotes, stomp, and you'll see why as I go through the story. Let's kick things off by talking about the Texas Derby. And the Texas Derby is one of the best derbies in MLS. It's up there with the likes of El Tráfico, the California Clasico, and the Hudson River Derby. The rivalry began in 2006 when the San Jose Earthquakes moved to Houston to become the Dynamo and add a local rival for FC Dallas. If you needed a sign that this would be a good rivalry, look no further than the first ever meeting, where Houston would win a thriller 4-3 over Dallas. While the rivalry was still young, and there were many more exciting moments to come in the future, as early as September 30th, 2007, a new record was added to the Texas Derby books. While Ricardo Clark may not be the first name neutrals think of when thinking about the Houston Dynamo, Dynamo fans will always remember Clark fondly. Clark began his career with the Metro Stars and was eventually traded to the San Jose Earthquakes, which is how he eventually ended up with the Houston Dynamo as part of the relocation. His first stint with the Dynamo was phenomenal, and actually where this event takes place. As we've covered in previous history episodes, the Dynamo would go on to win MLS Cup in their first season in Houston, that being 2006. Looking to be one of the few teams ever to win back-to-back MLS Cups, Houston brought back a strong team, including Ricardo Clark. Let's jump right to match day 26. Houston travels to Toyota Stadium to take on FC Dallas. As of this match day, Houston is 2 points behind Chivas USA for the top of the West, while Dallas is 5 points behind Houston. As there were still 3 games to be played, this game meant a lot for both sides, looking to still fight for the top of the West. Tons of legendary MLS names gracing the field this game, like a young Drew Moore and Dax McCarty for Dallas, offset by legends like Pat Onstad and Brian Ching for Houston. The game was quiet and contentious for almost all of the first half, but just when it looked like there would be no scoring, MLS legend Dwayne De Rosario popped up to make it 1-0 for Houston in the 45th +1. A gut punch right before the half for Dallas and a huge confidence boost for the Dynamo. Houston would ride the confidence by adding yet another 2 goals. Eddie Robinson in the 62nd and Stu Holden in the 84th. While the game was seemingly wrapped up at this point, the action was far from over. And around the 89th minute, it all kicked off. In Daryl's article, he does a really good job of describing the kind of player Carlos Ruiz was on the field. Many of us fans know him as a legendary MLS striker, but there was a part of his game that many fans likely missed, myself included. Daryl notes that anyone who has played against Carlos Ruiz knows the feeling. The kicks, the pokes, the elbows. A skilled striker, but a world-class pest. To further substantiate this claim, a few quotes in Darrow's article, including one from Eddie Robinson and another from Brian Ching, talked about how many players around the league likely were a bit happy to have seen this incident happen. It's much easier from a fan perspective to see now how this all unraveled. So let's finally jump back to what exactly did happen. A free kick for Dallas is taken not far from the Houston Dynamo penalty area. The ball was lofted into the area of Ruiz and Clark, who were both battling for the ball. Ruiz goes through the back of Clark and knocks him over, himself falling over in the process as well. Clark was quoted in Darrow's articles as saying he thought Ruiz had kneed him in the back, and that was the final straw that set him off. Without a single hesitation, Clark stood up, went over to Ruiz, who was still on the ground, and full force kicked him in the shoulder. If you go and watch the video, you can audibly hear the kick. It is very loud. There was a lot of force behind that.
Somos otra vez.
Servicio de McCarthy, 1-2, no pudieron contactar con.
Immediately, there's pushing and shoving with teammates coming over to separate players and try to dissolve the situation. Even after the kick, Clark is still heated and yelling as he is getting pushed away from the scrap. Unsurprisingly, many Dallas players were coming after Clark, while players on both sides were trying to separate them and cool everyone down. Clark obviously received a straight red for the incident, but interestingly enough, the already on a yellow Carlos Ruiz was also sent off for the original foul on Clark. The game would remain a 3-0 Houston win from there. Plenty of aftermath to cover in this incident as well. Clark would go on to receive the longest suspension in MLS history at the time, that being 9 games. And fun fact, one of the 3 players with the previous record suspension, that being 6 games, was the Dallas keeper in this game, Dario Sala. The suspension meant that Clark would miss out on the final games of the regular season, as well as all of the playoffs. Certainly a big blow for the Dynamo as they look to repeat as Cup champions. Luckily for Houston, they had a super strong team, and despite Clark's suspension, were able to win the 2007 MLS Cup, meaning they had completed the back-to-back. Clark's suspension was so long that it actually continued 2 games into the 2008 season. As soon as the suspension was over, Clark rejoined the team without missing a beat. Clark would finish his Dynamo career playing over 250 times for the side and engraving his name in Dynamo history. A happy end to Clark's story, but how did things end up between Ruiz and Clark? According to Darrow's article, in 2013, the pair had sat down, talked it out, and swapped jerseys. Following the reconciliation, Ruiz was quoted as saying, "Everything is in the past. We have a lot of respect for each other, so we changed jerseys and everything is good." A happy ending to the story that helped kickstart a fierce Texas derby.
So I can't help but notice I'm not picking up any of your story where you mentioned he started out Ricardo Clark as a Red Bull.
I did.
About his
I
time.
said Metro Stars.
Yeah, but like you just kind of like glanced over it. Like you could have gone at least 3 or 4 pages of notes into his time there, because you know what this is all about. No, in all seriousness, I think it's a very interesting conversation, and one that was brought up with Luis Suarez joining the league. Does the league need more villains? I've seen that kind of mentioned because I love that article. I've watched it a couple times, that video. The word villain has been used a lot, and it's not to say he's a bad person, but it's just a play style, right? He's very antagonistic. He's very much, I'm going to get under your skin, and that was something that Luis Suarez was described as coming in here. Do we need more of that? And that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, very, very interesting. And again, like you mentioned, somebody where we recognize him just from numbers alone as a clinical playoff goal scorer and somebody whose name constantly escapes me on trivia. But he has this other side of him. And again, being in Texas, right? The Texas Derby itself is insane playing out of that. I wonder what would happen if that happened today. Right? 9 games feels like it should be a little bit more than that after what I think. One of the most funny things too is in that video how crisp and clear every word in that audio is. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
hear someone yelling Rico, Rico, Rico before he kicked them.
That was the coach. So that was head coach.
The
Wade
audio
Barrett.
is really crisp.
Yeah, I believe that was head coach Wade Barrett, if I remember that correctly.
Barrett was the coach. I don't know if he was the quote, but Barrett was in charge at the time. Oh wait, no, I think Barrett was on the field actually.
Oh yeah, current interim head coach at the time, and
he was. I think he was the captain at that time.
Yes, he was captain and current. At the time of writing the article, was current head coach. I remember reading that. But yeah, Wade saw it coming and yelled something, and I just remember hitting Ruiz and just pandemonium after that. But again, like everybody knew what he was about, right? They even mentioned it. Like they first met up in
when he was
New York,
Metro
New Jersey.
Stars.
Yeah, like so sick, right? Like, yeah, that's the stuff. Like, I feel like if that happens in like another league, I feel like people just talk about it all the time. Like, oh my God, do you remember when this happened and this broke? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to get down that path, but
I have to say, I wanted to comment on the villains thing because the league having villains is fantastic. And I feel like the league has not marketed that very well, but like, look at the other big American sports leagues. Like Tom Brady was a perfect villain for the NFL. Like he was just like, he was such an easy person to pick as a villain for that league. And people loved to like watch Patriot games, even if they didn't have their team involved, because they wanted to see him lose. But it got more engagement, got people involved, it got people more committed. They were watching games that didn't involve their teams because there was a good villain to watch, I'll
tell you that's
I'm on board with it.
That's Josh Allen for me right now.
Well, that's just because you're a Jets fan.
Well, being a Jet fan in upstate New York, right, where Buffalo is modern, I watch it just to see him lose. Like it's great. And I agree. And by the way, I didn't want to get into the conversation too much, but I completely agree with you. I think it's good to have them so long as they're not causing too much of an issue. Like if Suarez goes around and starts biting people again, like, okay, time to go. Like there's a level of villainy that I'm okay with. But yeah, just being good and being annoying and being a pest. Awesome. hook it in my veins. I loved it. I
You know,
played with
you know
players
who
like
would have been great at that had he stuck around and continued to be successful? David Ochoa would have been so good.
Dude,
So
it's
good.
tough to do that as a goalkeeper though, because I used to do that too. Like on corner kicks, I'd be just like I don't know if you ever smelled my goalkeeper gloves, like when we would play on like
Did they
pickups.
smelled your goalkeeper gloves?
They're that bad where you can smell them from far away if they're bad enough.
I don't want to smell your
Well,
goalkeeper
that's my
gloves.
point. But what I was getting to is what I would used to do is I'd have people stand in front of the goalkeeper, right? So I take my gloves and they reek. I just rub them on their face,
Oh my
and they
gosh.
get the smell stuck on them. And then they teach you things too, like like step on their toes, right? Or poke them in the back, or do little things like that. And I had a kid turn around and smack me once, and he got sent off. I was like, hell yeah, I did it. Good job, go me, right?
Oh me.
But yeah, so great story, two great stories, right? One that absolutely stands out to most people. Apparently not you, but most people who know this league, right? That game is forever in our memories. And then there's one who the diehards know, but needs to be brought out to light more. So well done, good job. Thanks everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcasts, so when we go live, and post our episodes and things like that. Head to our website to find all of our links and episodes and things like that. And then follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. That way we can interact and you can see all of our clips and have some fun with us. Thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.